Welcome, traveler. Tonight, as we journey through ancient myths and forgotten tales, take a moment to settle in. Before we begin, I invite you to share in the comments where you're listening from. And if these stories bring you peace, consider subscribing to join us again under the stars. Section 1. Origins and Ancient Sightings in the whispering folds of the ancient woodlands, where twilight lingers long after the sun has set, and where the mist clings softly to moss-covered stones, there once existed a realm, both near to us and yet forever apart. This was the domain of the Fae, elusive beings woven from the delicate threads of nature's mystery, guardians of the wild places, and keepers of ancient secrets long forgotten by mortal men. The earliest mentions of these mysterious folk can be traced back to the Celtic lands, where bards sang their songs beside flickering hearth fires and druids carved symbols into weathered stones. In old Irish manuscripts, some preserved in crumbling monasteries, others passed down by word of mouth, the Fae were known as the Sidhe. The name is pronounced like the word she. It refers to the hollow hills or mounds beneath which they were believed to dwell. These were not simply piles of earth and stone. They were gateways to another world, a radiant and ethereal kingdom that overlapped with our own and shimmered at the edges like a dream. Barely remembered descriptions of the Fae varied from one glen to the next. In some villages, they were said to be tiny, winged beings with gossamer forms and a soft inner glow that pulsed with the heartbeat of the forest. In other stories, the Fae were tall, noble figures wearing robes woven from leaves, bark, and dew. Their eyes held the light of ages past, filled with ancient wisdom and playful mischief. One of the oldest records comes from a wandering monk in the 9th century. He wrote of a moonlit night near the forest of Killarney, where he saw a circle of strange figures dancing under the silver sky. Their laughter sounded like distant bells, delicate and hollow. As dawn approached, they vanished into a ring of mushrooms. Only the faint scent of wildflowers remained, and the whisper of a forgotten song. In Celtic tradition, the Fae were deeply tied to the turning of the seasons and the cycles of nature. In springtime, when the first buds emerged, it was said they stirred from beneath the hills to awaken the earth. Their joy brought blossoms to the fields. In the full bloom of summer, their courts held great feasts beneath the trees, hidden from human eyes by veils of mist and enchantment. As autumn arrived, the Fae grew quiet and solemn, preparing to return to their hidden mounds and rest beneath the frost. In winter, the world felt their absence, though some tales speak of shadows drifting through the snow, watching, protecting. The Fae were not merely creatures of beauty. Their nature was layered, mysterious, and sometimes dangerous. In some regions, they were honored as protectors, able to bless crops, heal the sick, and guide those who treated them with care. These people left gifts for the Fae at sacred places. A bowl of fresh milk, a spoon of honey, or a finely woven cloth might win their favor. But the Fae could also be tricksters. They're just as strange and swift. They were known to lead wanderers astray in deep forests or draw them into endless dances from which they never returned. Many symbols were linked to the Fae, rich with meaning. A rare 4-leaf clover was said to protect the bearer from their spells. Fairy rings, those perfect. Circles of mushrooms were both a warning and a temptation. To step inside one was to risk slipping into their world. Willow trees were sacred places where old magic clung to the air. Certain plants, such as St. John's wort or rowan berries, were believed to repel their influence and were carried. For protection. In old stories, the border between the Fae realm and our own was never fixed. Travelers spoke of places where the boundary grew thin. In these thin places, one might glimpse strange lights or hear distant music carried on the wind. These spots were often marked by ancient stones, twisted trees, or still, silent glades where the very air felt alive and watchful. What is most fascinating is how the stories changed from place to place. Each village added its own colors to the legend. In the Highlands of Scotland, the Fae were called the Dowan Shi and were sometimes believed to be the spirits of noble ancestors. In Wales, the Tylwyth Teg were joyful dancers, but still dangerous if crossed. In Norse lands across the sea, stories told of the Huldufolk, the hidden people who shared the same mystery and unpredictability. Even early Christian monks, though, cautious of old beliefs, found themselves drawn into the Fae's lingering charm. Some saints were said to have encountered them in the wilderness. Writers called them spirits or demons, yet could not deny how deeply the Fae lived in the hearts of the people. As the centuries passed, the great forests were cleared, and the old mounds were broken by plow and stone. The Fae withdrew further into legend, their presence softening to echoes and dreams. Yet even now, in quiet mornings or beneath a new moon's silver light, some say their gaze can still be felt. Silent, watching, waiting. But what were these beings, truly? Were they guardians of the forest, or illusions shaped by longing and fear? Did they dwell just beyond our sight, in hidden realms that mirror our own? Or are they the memories of an older world, still breathing within the hush of ancient tales? As a candle flickers low and the night grows deeper, the forest holds its secrets close. Soon we will uncover the rituals and warnings that once guided humankind's careful steps, the offerings, protections, and strange stories that still whisper. Section 2. Rituals, Warnings, and Encounters. Long ago, when the boundaries between worlds were thin and the wild places vast, the bond between humans and the Fae was woven with care, caution, and quiet wonder. The forest was not just a gathering of trees and roots. It was a sacred space where the human and the otherworldly touched. It was a place of beauty, but also of danger. In villages that bordered the ancient woods, elders told stories of old rituals meant to honor the Fae and keep their favor. Offerings were placed at the edges of the forest, sometimes on flat stones, sometimes beneath the oldest trees whose roots reached deep into the earth like tangled memory. These gifts were simple but meaningful. A bowl of fresh milk, a bit of honey, the first handful of grain from the harvest. Even a scrap of fine cloth could be enough if offered with respect. That the timing of these offerings was just as important as the gifts themselves. Many rituals were tied to the changing seasons. Samhain was one of the most sacred times, the moment when the year turned and the veil between worlds grew thin. It was said the Fae were strongest then, their realm closer than ever. To forget them during this turning was to invite misfortune. The Fae were not distant gods but present forces living in the leaves and the wind. One such rite, remembered in parts of Ireland and Scotland, was called the Fairy Wake. At twilight, villagers would light candles and walk together in silence, singing old songs passed down through the generations. An empty chair would be placed near the fire, a seat in case a visitor from the other world chose to join. Very rarely, someone claimed to see a fey guest, glowing faintly or shimmering like fog. Their eyes, they said, were deep and full of the stars. But these rituals were not only meant to invite the fey, they were also meant to protect. Warnings passed quietly from grandparent to child. The fey could bless, but they could also take. To be taken meant many things. Some spoke of vanishing into hidden hills, others of falling under a spell, dancing forever in a circle of moonlight. And some simply disappeared. People carried charms to guard themselves. A cross of rowan wood hung over the doorway, a sprig of St. John's wort worn during midsummer, salt scattered by a threshold, believed to block their magic. Even a bit of iron, cold and solid, was thought to protect against enchantment. Many still remember the old saying, "No fairy can pass iron's edge." Travelers told strange stories. Some spoke of lights in the trees, soft and flickering, that moved like lanterns. These were called will-o'-the-wisps. They danced just out of reach, leading people deeper into the woods. Some followed them, thinking they had found a path. Some came back, changed. Others were never seen again. One legend from the Isle of Man tells of a girl named Ain. One spring morning, she stepped inside a ring of mushrooms and picked a blue flower from its center. The next moment, the world shifted. She saw beings of light and shadow moving among the trees. She disappeared for what felt like a single day, but when she returned, years had passed. Her eyes shone with something strange, as if she had seen a place no longer meant for humans. In Brittany, the Corrigans were feared and admired. They appeared as small women with shining eyes and silver voices, dancing on hills at dusk. If a man joined their dance, he might never return, lost to endless revelry in a land that did not follow human time. The fey were not only tricksters, they interfered in quiet, unsettling ways. Some believed they would swap human infants for their own, leaving behind changelings. Others thought the fey could twist fate, turning love to sorrow or fortune to ruin. If a child sickened without cause, or if a home fell into sudden misfortune, people whispered the old words. The fey had touched it, and yet not all was fear. Some stories told of fey gifts, a talent for music, a lucky streak that never faded, a glimpse of something that had not yet happened. But even these blessings came with a price. No one kept a gift from the fey without giving something in return, though the cost was often hidden. The world itself carried signs of the fey, a perfect circle of mushrooms, a grove where the wind never stirred, stones laid in patterns too precise to be chance. All of these marked places where the veil was thin. People avoided them or left a token in peace. Some clearings were called the fairy courts. To disturb them was to invite their wrath. Travelers' notes speak of strange rules. To enter a fairy ring without asking was rude. To take food from the fey was dangerous. To speak your real name in their presence could mean forgetting who you were. Some carried tiny bells. The sound, they believed, broke spells and scattered illusions. The Fae were everything nature could be. Kind but wild, beautiful but deadly. They reminded people that the forest was not just a place to cut and build. It was alive, and it remembered God as time passed. The woods grew smaller. The rituals faded. But still, in quiet corners, people remember a piece of bread left on a stone, a whisper offered to the trees, a path walked without speaking. Even now, when fog curls low and the moon is shy, you might hear something in the trees. A laugh that is not quite human. A flicker of light where no light should be. The old pacts are not forgotten. Only sleeping dot what lies behind the gifts they gave and the warnings they left. What truths remain hidden in the stories passed down through firelight and song? Soon we will step into the final part of their story. We will explore how the Fae faded from sight, how they live on in legend, and what they might still mean in the world today. Section 3. Decline, Modern Legends, and Interpretations. As the world changed, the Fae stepped quietly into the mist. Great forests were cut down, stone roads split the land, and firelight gave way to electric glow. The sacred places of the old. Stories were lost beneath farmland and concrete. And so the Fae withdrew. Not gone, but hidden. Where once the mound stood untouched, people began to dig and build. Where fairy rings bloomed under the stars, tractors rolled through soil that no longer whispered. But for those who listened closely, the hush of the Fae never fully disappeared. It simply softened, like a song fading into the trees. The stories changed, but they did not die. In the Scottish Highlands, some elders still speak of fairy hills. On certain nights, when fog rolls low and the air holds still, they say the hills hum with a sound too soft to hear. A music that moves through the bones rather than the ears. A memory of something older than the path beneath your feet. In small villages across Ireland and Wales, gifts are still left on windowsills. Not always out of belief, but out of respect. A biscuit, a bit of cream, a flower placed beside the hearth. These are not only for tradition, they are quiet acts of remembrance. Gentle offerings to something unseen. Over time, the Fae in stories became softer, kinder, more playful than perilous. They became guardians of forests, helpers of lost children, bringers of dreams. But this was never the whole truth. The Fae were never simply sweet. They were wild, untamed. Their mercy was never promised. Still, this shift reflects something real, a longing to reconnect with the natural world, a desire for beauty beyond the walls of the city. The Fae became symbols of something missing, something just out of reach, not fantasy, but memory. The part of us that remembers what it feels like to wander and wonder. Writers, painters, and musicians carry their legacy forward. They appear in fairy tales and novels, in songs and plays. The names may change, but the feeling remains. A flicker at the edge of vision. A sense that we are never truly alone in the woods. Some believe the Fae live on in other ways. In every sudden gust of wind, in the way animals pause at nothing, in those moments of deja vu when the world feels slightly out of step. These are echoes, reminders that another world still brushes against our own. There are places people still avoid, without knowing why. A crooked tree with roots like grasping fingers. A patch of grass where nothing grows. A path in the woods where the air feels too still. These are the places where stories breathe, not with fear, but with quiet knowing. Folklorists and scholars have debated what the Fae truly were: spirits of the land, lost gods, embodied memory. Some call them metaphor, others call them real. But those who have wandered the moors in mist or walked ancient hills alone at dusk often find no need for answers. They simply feel. Even in the age of machines and glass towers, the old tales remain. They adapt, they wait. A child hears story and dreams of glowing woods. A stranger leaves a coin on a stone without knowing why. A circle of mushrooms grows overnight, and no one steps inside. The Fae remind us of the quiet things, the soft power of the unseen, the beauty in not understanding everything. They remind us that there is still mystery in the world, and that some doors are best left unopened out. So now, as the night deepens and your breath slows, imagine a quiet forest. Imagine a faint light flickering beneath the trees. Imagine the hush of leaves and the cool earth beneath your feet. The forest court may be silent, but it is not gone. It waits like a forgotten melody. Perhaps it waits in dreams. Perhaps it waits in you.